Welcome to today's edition of the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. Kevin Rogers with you for Monday, September 20th, 2021. And we got a lot of NFL talk to get to in just a little bit. Dave Sharapan will join us, as he does every Monday during the football season, former oddsmaker, media personality. He knows his way around the sports book, and we're going to talk to Dave coming up in just a few minutes. But before we get to Dave, want to tell you about our friends at WynnBET and the WynnBET risk-free bet that you can make. That, look, the Wynn Hotel and Casino, it's a big thing in Las Vegas, and now they have created an app where in several states, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and most recently in Arizona, if you're 21 or over, those states now, it is legal to bet on sports, and WynnBET has a $1,000 risk-free bet. Now, what does that mean? If you lose your first wager, you get it back up to $1,000 as a free bet credit that you can use for another bet. So the WynnBET mobile sports book, you can get it on iOS, you can get it on Android, and it started in New Jersey as far as the online sports betting experience, and now look how much it's blown up in all these different states. And also want to remind you, if you are in New Jersey, they are the official partner of the New York Jets. And if you go to MetLife Stadium, yesterday against New England Patriots, the Jets played there. Eligible bettors of legal age can enjoy the atmosphere of a fully fledged in-person sports book at the WynnBET Green Room over at MetLife Stadium. So check out this great offer from WynnBET. $1,000 risk-free bet, must be 21 or over, and it's legal in Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arizona. So very excited about that and our friends at WynnBET as we look at week 2 in the NFL, and we bring on our friend Dave Sharapan, who is with us. And Dave is wearing his Denver Broncos hat. Now, I'm going to say, Elway's too easy, but who was your favorite Bronco from that era?
Oh, man, it has to be Elway. I don't even know. This hat just showed up literally yesterday. I got on the bandwagon. They're 2-0. They got the Jets on deck. They're 3-0. I'm doing all these shows, and I said, send me a Denver hat. So I got a Denver hat. I like the old school logo better than the new one. That's where. And
what's funny is that I feel like it was them and the Buccaneers that when they changed their logo, they finally won Super Bowls.
You're right, actually, now that you said that.
Elway could never win. He could never beat Montana, never beat Washington, never beat any of those teams in Super Bowl until they changed their logo. That was the difference, Dave.
You're right. One of the best ever was Randy Gradishar. Do you remember Randy Gradishar?
That was a little before my time.
Yeah, he was the guy that was that middle linebacker. So, I kind of grew up with Jack Lambert, and the middle linebacker was always the guy, Mike Singletary, and Randy Gradishar. Just the name alone, hard to spell, hard to say sometimes. He was that guy. And Steve Atwater also was just that hard-hitting safety that wore this uniform. Not so much offense. It was all defense more in Denver, but I focused on the defensive guys all the time.
Well, my favorite Bronco is still Tom Jackson because of NFL primetime.
Oh, he was the best. Tom Jackson changed the way you watched highlights. There's no doubt. Like that, him and Berman every Sunday became must-watch television. Whether you got to see the games or not, you had to watch that. And to this day, I'll call my brother-in-law up and say, what's he got to do, Tommy? Knock it down. Like, we still do it on the phone now because that's what you were doing every Sunday forever.
Well, because you had no red zone and you didn't have the phones, so you literally had to wait till 7 o'clock to see the highlights of the other games because all you got was, going way back, CBS had the NFC games on. NBC had the AFC games on. You watched those. You saw maybe a few highlights at halftime of your game, but then all the highlights you would watch later on primetime.
That's it. And you had to see it. And for a lot of times, that was the only time you could, like, see these other guys playing or see the uniforms, what they wore that day. Like, it was a big deal, and it had to be watched. I mean, going back a little earlier than you, I mean, I had to do this on Monday Night Football when Howard Cosell did the highlights of, at halftime. That was the only time I got to see teams like the Rams on video and stuff like that. So absolutely, man, it was a fun time. And those were such fun shows. And you heard Berman say stuff, and then Tom Jackson would provide other information that I think as gamblers we were kind of using, but we weren't using. It was just great from an entertainment standpoint.
I want to look back, Dave, at what we've seen so far in the first 2 weeks from a number standpoint. Now, this number here, 21-10 against the spread, underdogs so far with one game remaining this week in the NFL. What are you laughing at?
It's just it's crazy. Like, it doesn't happen this way this early. And books, I mean, last week was such a good week. This week, maybe not as good because a couple public, really heavy favorites won and covered. But I mean, it's so hard. It's hard to pick this NFL stuff. It's hard to find a lot of winners. It's hard. And I think the books are really getting the best of bettors right now.
Now, look at this, 9-6 against the spread, 5-10 straight up. So you had a couple of dogs that covered in losses. That was Houston, Indianapolis, Minnesota, and then the Giants on Thursday night. But you had 5 outright winners, Dave.
Yeah.
Carolina, Las Vegas, Tennessee, Baltimore, and Dallas. Let's look through some of those games. First with Las Vegas. I know you watched that game. I know Steelers, Raiders, goes back a long time, and now the Raiders, that's a really good win going out east, and they've been all right under Gruden in the last year or so on the road, but that's a really nice win for the Raiders because I thought coming off the Monday night win over the Ravens that, all right, tough travel, Pittsburgh played well in the second half against Buffalo, but the Raiders, look, they played well, and the Steelers' offense didn't look very good.
No, the offense is – I hate to say it. I mean, is Ben aging in dog years right before our eyes? Like, I said this to someone this morning earlier. They don't have a tight end, and Ben's had his greatest successes when he's had a tight end, just a safety valve, middle of the field option. Now he's got he's got a pretty good core set of receivers, but a lot of those throws, throwing outs and throwing deep, especially, just doesn't look like it's there. And then you get a team like the Raiders who come in and can score quickly like they did at the end. But, man, Waller is top tight end in football right now. Like, he is a beast. And Carr uses him perfectly. Whenever he needs to make a play or get out of trouble, throws it up, the guy goes and gets it. And I think Gruden, obviously knows he's got pretty much the best tight end in the NFL there and gets him the ball a lot. He's got a lot of targets. He's got a lot of things. I'm impressed with the Raiders going there and winning. I didn't think they were going to go there and win. I thought they could go there and cover because the Steelers' offense is so still getting right, still maybe not going to get right this season. I don't know. We had conflicting opinions here at the Consig house with the kids. I mean, are they Vegas kids? They're Vegas team, Las Vegas Raiders. I said, we're Steeler fans in this house. We're Steeler fans. You're Steeler fans. And now there's a little bit of issues going on because they won. I expected the Steelers to win that game, and I could say, listen, they're still our team. And now you can't because this town is going crazy. Like, books are having to fade a hometown team in the NFL for the first time ever. And I think you're starting to see some lines being moved, maybe over-moved because of it. I
mean, Dave, Las Vegas so far beating Baltimore, Pittsburgh, that's a really strong resume out of the gate, both as an underdog.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, you have to move so many different markets now because of, all these different offers. But I mean, can they make the playoffs? I mean, you'd have said no 2 weeks ago. Now you have to say maybe. I don't know if you actually plant the seed and bet yes, but you have to change the division odds. They're leading the division, K-Raj. They're 2-0 along with Denver, while the Chargers and the Chiefs are both 1-1. So again, as an odds maker, you kind of sit in a room and you go, okay, relax. I don't think they're making the playoffs, but you got to move the number because people are betting it. So I think that was probably, isn't that the most impressive start of any team? I think in the NFL, 2-0, 2 games against Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I think that's pretty good.
It is good. And you mentioned the Chiefs. And look, this is my take going into this game last night. And obviously, Kansas City threw this game away. But the Chiefs going into it, narrative 3-0 against Baltimore. Lamar can't beat the Chiefs. And the Chiefs went into Baltimore last year on the Monday night as 3.5-point dogs. Now it's flipped to a favorite this time around. Baltimore off a tough loss to Vegas, and the Chiefs came back and beat the Browns. I felt like, Dave, the whole world was on Kansas City, and you saw that line move up. Did you know anybody that was on Baltimore? Because it didn't feel like that was the case, that people were just – you were on Baltimore.
Yes. Actually,
Why did you like Baltimore over Kansas City?
I thought the number should have been 3 to open, because you just knew the way people were going to bet after Baltimore kind of gave away that game with those turnovers against the Raiders. This seen this so many times when the Monday night team that loses comes home and is getting points to play on. And this thing opened 1.5, immediately got bet 2.5, 3, went right through the 3 to 3.5. It got all the way to 4 until it got touched by anyone. And I was like, man, I said if Baltimore loses to the Raiders, I love them in week 2. If they beat the Raiders and don't cover, I still like them. If they would have blown out the Raiders, I would have been cautious, because the line wouldn't have been Chiefs -3. It would have been maybe pick or Baltimore -1.5. So I just thought it was a perfect spot. I'm not down on the Chiefs defense, but they can be scored upon. It's a different type of game to beat them. You have to play up tempo. You have to go for it on 4th downs. You have to say, I'm going to score 40 points. It's going to take 40 for me to win tonight. And the Ravens can do that. So that's why I like them. My takeaway from their game against the Raiders was a perfect game for the Raiders. I still think Baltimore is a legit threat to Cleveland to win the division and be a top 3 team in the AFC.
Now, I want to ask you about this one, and we're going to get to some of these other games, but it's beyond my comprehension, Dave, that the smart money, the sharp money was on the Cincinnati Bengals this week, considering the fact that Joe Burrow has never won a road game as an NFL quarterback. And even though Andy Dalton got hurt, I thought it was the Andy Dalton revenge tour with one stop against the Cincinnati Bengals. But the Bears, they were up big. The Bengals came back, but Chicago ended up winning. But can you explain why the money dropped on this and why the number dropped and people are all over Cincinnati?
Classic week 1 overreaction, right? They beat the Vikings at home. They get to go to Chicago, who, now keep in mind, Chicago looked terrible against the Rams in a primetime game that everybody saw. So initial money comes in, the sharp money, quote unquote, bets the Bengals. Now you provide facts. A lot of times the quote unquote sharp money doesn't provide facts. They just bet stuff and they lose as well. This was another one. I had the Bears. I talked about the Bears on my podcast, on different shows that I do. I had them. I made my case for them, with the guy that I'm helping with the contest. I'm like, you have to pick the Bears. The Bears -2.5 has to be one of your 5 games. And he did. So it's just, again, you have to there's progressions, right? There's different things that have to happen. Cincinnati, I think, is headed in the right direction. Got a lot of work to do to get there. Getting to a point where you're catching less than a field goal on the road in another team's home opener, like the Bears, who still have a legit defense. And I don't think anybody anticipated, Fields coming in the game the way he did yesterday, including him. You can't come in a game on 20-3 in the fourth quarter and throw picks. Like they let them back into the game. That is one of the most misleading scores of the entire weekend. That game wasn't close, and I think as you do recaps and we do shows like this, like you can find the different things in there. Cincinnati's got a ways to go to play on the road.
Now, you mentioned the Bears losing to the Rams last week, which, again, it's not a surprise. I don't know why people were so down on the Bears because the Rams are really good. But the Rams, they end up beating the Colts 27-24. And Carson Wentz, I mean, this guy, seriously, has a shovel pass intercepted in the red zone. The Rams end up not covering, Dave. They were laying 3.5. It closed at 4. Were you surprised the Colts even came back to hang in that game?
I was a little bit. I've never seen a punt kind of get snapped off the up guy and then go into the end zone and get recovered by the other team. That swung the whole game. That felt like that was going to be, one more score away from being like a blowout where they know the Colts have to throw. The Rams can just go after them, and a good team beats a bad team. And then today's NFL, one thing happens and it turns quick. And yes, I was surprised. Does anyone look more out of sorts or out of character than Carson Wentz to you, Kevin? Like he didn't look right in Philly last year. And it looked like, not that the guys weren't blocking for him, but just nobody believed what he was saying. Didn't look like the team was on his side, because when Hurts went in, it was like, man, everything looked different. I don't know. Like, what are you doing the shovel pass for when he'd never do it? I thought of the movie, Remember the Titans, like, coach, I can't make that pitch. I can't make that pitch. Like, he threw it. It looked like they never practiced that play. So I don't know. Like, the Colts are 0-2, 2 hard games. I mean, you figured them to be a split when you looked at the season wins. They're 0-2. The division's a mess, but I don't think the Colts are going to make the playoffs. Like, I don't think – I thought they might before, but Wentz looks out of sorts, and it's still going to take some time to build up that cohesion.
Now, the Colts play the Titans coming up this week, so it doesn't get any easier. In Tennessee, they were a team, Dave, that could afford to go 0-2 because their division's not good. Jacksonville, we know, is terrible. Houston is not good, and Indianapolis now has got off to a bad start. But Tennessee gets that big win yesterday at Seattle. They were down in the fourth quarter by 2 touchdowns, so good win for them. Now, a couple of things on this. Number one, do you think Mike Vrabel should have gone for the 2 when Derrick Henry scored the touchdown when they got down 1 just to avoid overtime?
It's a hard call. Like, they only know that on the sideline. I wouldn't have been, he would have got buried if he went for it and didn't make it, So I see the pluses, the minuses. I'm impressed with their ability to come back in the game. I thought after last week, when they got down to Arizona, they just were done. And they came back on the road in Seattle, one of the hardest places to play, came back and just got it to overtime. Impressive enough for me. Game goes over, of course. Every Titans game goes over. I think last year it was like 12-4 to the over. They're 2-0 to the over. They're playing the Colts this week. Expect the game to go over just because that's what they do. Now, I'm a little surprised at the line, to be perfectly honest. It feels a little bit high. I saw the openers were like 3 and something. It's up to 4.5, 5.5, 5. So, yes, I'm surprised by the side. Not surprised by the totals. 50, probably headed over.
Now, another team that's going to go over a lot, Dave, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, I mean, yesterday, I liked Atlanta. They're down 28-25. You think, all right, you got a shot to cover. Brady takes them down the field. Okay, they're back up 10. And Matt Ryan throws 2 pick sixes. You're like, come on, dude. And seriously, it's just crazy how this team just scores. It feels like at will. Brady has 5 touchdown passes. And Bucs, over. I know they didn't cover against Dallas, but 2 overs already. They finally covered here against Atlanta, and they're 2-0.
It's not supposed to be this easy, Kevin. It's not. I mean, like what Brady's doing. He's 44. He looks like he's 24, and they're having fun. The defense, you can't run against them. You can't. So they force you into passing situations, and they make a guy like Matt Ryan, who looks like he's going to at least go on the road and cover as a double-digit divisional dog, which we know, as everyone talks about, is supposed to cover. And then they don't. And they don't even cover the super teaser, the sweetheart teaser in that situation. It's so fast how it can happen. I can't wait for, I believe this week will probably, if they beat the Rams, we'll be talking about in books, will Tampa go undefeated prop? This is the game of the week, Tampa and the Rams. And I mean, I've seen some couple places have Tampa favored at the Rams. Can't believe it. Won't end that way. But Tampa and the Rams, I know where I'll be Sunday at 1:25 Pacific.
And I'm looking right now, Dave. I see at Circa, Tampa Bay is laying 1. They're a pick 'em at the Westgate. Some places have the Rams laying 1. It's going to be a crazy swing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we don't want to go to the NFC Championship preview this early, but man, those are 2 really good teams, and Super Bowl's in LA this year. So, and Brady's never played a game in LA, which I found very fascinating in his career. But that's going to be an unbelievable game, though.
Oh, I can't wait. That's the afternoon window. It's unfortunate for Seattle, Minnesota, the Jets in Denver, and Miami and Vegas. Ain't nobody going to be watching those games. Even people here aren't going to be watching the 2-0 Las Vegas Raiders because we'll all be watching Tampa and the Rams. I can't wait. I think it's a good contrast, right? The Rams defense, man, are they good. And they get after it. Like, they're nasty. Stafford and Culp look like they've been playing together for years. So I think it's going to be one of those ones. I mean, what do you make the total in this? I would have said to the guys in the room when they asked me, I don't know, 100? Like, what are you talking about? No, make it 100. Remember when KC played the Rams a couple years ago in that primetime game? I was doing the game in-game, sitting in the book going, they're going to score 100. And they're like, Sharapan, shut up. I'm like, I'm telling you, they're going to score 100. I kept moving the number up, 88, 96. We got over 100 during that in-game. This might be like that. Who's stopping who in this one? I don't know.
What, in retrospect, Dave, was the lock of the day yesterday? Now looking at it, thinking back, I mean, for me, it was probably the Patriots that the Jets have had. But what was your lock of the day now on Monday, looking back to Sunday?
It was either the Patriots or it was the Bears for me. We do a segment on my podcast, and it was like one side, one total, one prop, and the one guy said the Patriots, which eliminated me from saying it, so I had to say the Bears. Those were my 2 games. And I mean, is Denver that easy? Like, I don't know if Denver was that easy, but Jacksonville is that bad, Kev. Like, they're a mess. You look at the game on the sideline, and I mean, you're not in Jacksonville, but like, how much time do you think it will take for Urban to get things right? You want to talk about, because it looks bad. Like, and I don't know how many games it takes for Lawrence to take a couple shots and maybe get hurt, but you got to keep him upright and healthy. I don't know. How do you make the numbers? Like, I used to say that in a room. Like, I don't know what number am I going to give someone to bet Jacksonville this week? I don't know.
Like, Jacksonville's playing Arizona, and Arizona's laying 7 going back out east after they had that wild win against the Vikings on Sunday. And, I mean, I'm just putting this out to you. Who's worse right now, the Jags or the Jets?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, if the Jets played the Jags in New York or the Meadowlands, they would be over a field goal favorite. I think if the game is in Jacksonville, I mean, it's a pick. I think it's a pick. I don't think I can give. I can't make Jacksonville a small favorite. So I think Jacksonville to me is the worst, but it's close. It's close because the offensive line for the Jets, they can't protect this kid. Zach Wilson's, 4 picks yesterday, just throwing a ball away to stay alive. So I think you see it happen fast where like that adjustment was made. I know why that's 11 because you can make it 10 and ain't nobody. We need to find a number where the bag guys, the sharp money, I call them the rhombuses and the parallelograms, somebody got to bet the Jets. We got to find that number. It's like a discovery process early in the week. So you put it out and hope somebody takes it because they ain't taking it. And they're not taking it in Jacksonville either. Not yet. I think that thing's going to go up. And then maybe, we get 7.5, 8. Somebody might be interested in grabbing a home dog.
Let's look at tonight, Dave. Packers and Lions, and Green Bay laying 11.5. It is up to 12 at a few spots. But Aaron Rodgers was terrible last week. Detroit had that crazy comeback when they were down 4 touchdowns to San Francisco, so let's not get ahead of ourselves with the Lions. But I never like taking double-digit favorites off losses. I feel like, there's an overreaction. But with Green Bay, I don't know how you make a case for Detroit tonight. I really don't. I got to think with the Packers playing the 49ers next week, you got to get a blowout if you're Aaron Rodgers, the Packers, right?
I think so. I think, and they looked so disoriented last week. I mean, like it just was one of those games where I mean, when I'm coaching and we have these games and you're sitting there, you just feel it. You can't stop it. We had a great expression that was given to us by another a coach one clinic, and it was like, just flush it all. Just flush it right down the toilet. That's it. It's gone. And I think that's what Green Bay did. So what comes out of that? Oh, man. This may be – you think he saw Brady throw 5 touchdowns yesterday at age 44? You think he's heard about it? I'm sure he won't tell you he did, but I'm sure he didn't. He knows. And this might be one of those light it up nights for Green Bay. I make zero case for Detroit. And I love to take dogs and take points. Not this one. I can't do it. The total, I don't know, Kevin. I feel like I'm screaming uncle sometimes when I keep betting unders. Like I just want to, because I grew up the NFL. There was more unders than overs, at least in the book. That's how the books made a lot of money. Every session, every game in the afternoon went over yesterday, except the Dallas game. And then the night game was ridiculous. I thought they were going to score 100 in that game. So I think if you have a willing participant, a willing dance partner, games are flying over. I don't know how many points Detroit's scoring tonight. I don't know what to make of that team. I think I'd bet under their team total right now.
Now, before I let you go, Dave, the Penn State Nittany Lions, they hung on. They beat Auburn, the whiteout in Happy Valley. It got a little dicey at the end, I'm sure, but you held on. So how did you feel with that win?
Oh, my goodness. It was so much fun. I can't believe they threw a fade. They ran the ball all the way down, and then they let Bo Nix throw a fade in the corner just hand the ball off, and they score. And then we got to play overtime. I know what's going to happen. We got to play overtime. And my underplay loses. My Penn State cover play loses. Everything that I had said is going to lose. And then it didn't. It was so much fun watching every play. And now, I'm doing stuff on TikTok and all this other crap. And I'm watching a game like a little kid again, like a student section fan. It's fun. In games like this, when I was in the book in the risk room, you had to be quiet. But I always got a pass for the Penn State games. They're like, oh, Sharapan's playing. Penn State's playing Ohio State. Penn State, they knew which games it was. It was just a Big Ten, big games. So to have an SEC team and get a shot at an SEC team, oh, that felt good. I ain't going to lie. That felt real good. And now they moved up in the polls. They're 6th in the country. Oh, boy. Now comes the spotlight. Now comes the pressure. And probably a damn loss to Iowa. I know what's coming, Kevin. I know what's coming, but I'm enjoying it right now.
Well, a couple big wins so far, beating Wisconsin on the road and beating Auburn. So you take that. Still a long way to go. Ohio State hasn't been sharp, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But Iowa's had a couple good wins, and we saw Michigan State. I'm in South Florida. Michigan State came down and beat Miami down.
Dude, they can't lose, right? I mean, like, what is going on? Like, you want to talk about a flip of a switch in a program or whatever. Michigan State is legit. Like, they're not just beating teams, they're laying it on them a little bit. Like, that was one of those ones, like, I think they were doing it for a bunch of people. And I love Miami, and I loved it back in the day when they went against Penn State back in 1987. I was rooting for Penn State. I hated both teams because I was from Pittsburgh still, and I hadn't gone to school yet. So who are these guys in Miami? Couldn't stand them. Same thing with Penn State. Now, Michigan State, like, their season win total was 6, I think, or 6.5. Headed way over that. I don't know. College football has been so much fun, Kevin, with the fans in the buildings again and all the hype that comes around it. The day's games. I mean, I'm up watching. I actually fell asleep during the Hawaii-San Jose State game. Started at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. I'm like, I got to get up. I got to stay up to the halftime. I'm tweeting people, trying to stay awake. It was tough, but, man, college football's back. It's fun.
Is it because, before I let you go, is it because we've seen Clemson lose, we've seen Ohio State lose, Alabama had a close shave against Florida, that you can knock these teams off, that it's not just going to be the same 4 teams every year in the Final Four?
I think that does more good for college football as in general, just for the playoff and for the discussions and all the content. But what it does in the book is it creates action. I mean, when you put up these big spreads, nobody bets them. Nobody wants to touch 28 when a team's favored by 28. But now, the Clemson thing has really brought a new dynamic in, right? They barely won against Georgia Tech. So now a lot of things are in question. Ohio State was laying 14 to Oregon and lost outright. So if the big dogs can go down, then you start to see more bets, and you start like the buzz in the book on Saturdays. I always loved it, but a lot of guys weren't college guys, so they didn't really get it. But now, man, if anybody can beat anybody, I think it's great for us, in the content business. It's great in the books, and it's great for the fans. There's a lot of stuff that, will be yet to be determined, as not like years past, right now in September.
Dave Sharapan, you could find him on Twitter at SportsBKConsig. You see it right there on the screen. Sportsbook Consigliere. It's shortened to SportsBKConsig. And Dave's going to join us every Monday here on the Daily Insider to look back at the football weekend. Dave, as always, thanks a lot for the time, and we'll talk to you next week.
Keep up the good work, Kevin. Thank you, sir.
All right, appreciate it.
Christopher, I said see you as well.
And I like the D. The D is for Dave, not for Denver.
That's it. I love it.
You like that? All right, I'll talk to you next week, Dave. Thank you.
See you later.
All right, there's Dave Sharapan joining us. Always great work from him, and he's going to be on with us every Monday during the football season. And let's take a look at some of the other NFL games that we didn't hit on with Dave. And I think I mentioned this on Friday with when Brian Edwards and Mark Franco were on. And I said, are we going to get the good Jameis or the bad Jameis in Carolina this past weekend? And what did we end up getting? We got the bad Jameis, as the Saints end up losing to the Panthers 26-7. Jameis Winston throws for 111 yards, and the Saints have 128 yards of offense. And good for Carolina. I'm going to give the Panthers a lot of credit here, because they look 2-0 out of the chute. They get Houston Thursday night, very winnable game on the road. And good job by Matt Rule. Matt Rule does this every stop he goes. Did at Temple, at Baylor, and now with Carolina. That he'll struggle the first season. Sam Darnold played very well. And a really good win for the Carolina Panthers on Sunday to beat New Orleans. One of the underdogs that covered in a loss, the Houston Texans, Tyrod Taylor got hurt. We'll see if he plays on Thursday night or not, or if it's the Davis Mills show, the former Stanford quarterback. The Texans lose to the Browns 31-21. So the Browns end up covering as a dog against the Chiefs in week 1, but don't cover as a favorite in week 2 against Houston. And Cleveland right now, one of 4 teams in the AFC North. All 4 of them are 1-1 so far on the season. The Bills end up busting up the Dolphins 35-0, a game that Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt in. And Buffalo, great rebound by them after they lost to Pittsburgh, a game that they were in control of through the first half and even going to the fourth quarter. Pittsburgh got 17 in the fourth quarter of that game. But a really good job by the Bills to shut out the Dolphins. They bounce back. They're now 1-1 on the season. The 49ers over the Eagles in Philadelphia, 17-11. And a game that the Eagles had chances. Jalen Hurts had, a 94-yard completion, and the Eagles didn't score on that drive, which is kind of amazing. But Jimmy Garoppolo, he continues to play well for the 49ers, or at least get them in the win column. Okay, maybe the numbers aren't tremendous, but he does enough to get them to win. And San Francisco, they are still very good on the road under Kyle Shanahan the last few seasons. They were 7-1 in their NFC championship or NFC champion year when they got to the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs. They were 7-1 on the road then. They were 6-2 last year, and so far 2-0 this year. So very good job there by San Francisco, staying out east, winning 2 games to get Green Bay coming up on Sunday. The Cardinals beat the Vikings. We just touched on that, Dave and I, during our discussion. But this Arizona team, they score a bunch of points again for the second straight week. Minnesota, for whatever reason, they just could not hold on. They missed a field goal, a very makeable field goal in the final seconds. And the Vikings, look, they've lost a game in overtime at Cincinnati, and they've lost a game in the final seconds to Arizona. Kirk Cousins had a good game. Dalvin Cook had a good game. The problem was Kyler Murray threw for 400 yards. Rondale Moore, the rookie out of Purdue, had a 77-yard touchdown. He had over 100 yards receiving. And he gave it to DeAndre Hopkins, only had 54 yards receiving. But yet Arizona's 2-0 out of the gate, and Minnesota 0-2. And the Vikings, they'll return home coming up this week. And look, Minnesota, they are obviously in desperate need of a win. And who do they draw? They get the Seattle Seahawks at home. So it doesn't get any easier for them. And the other game that we didn't hit on, the Cowboys, they end up beating the Chargers out in L.A. 20-17. A game the Cowboys were in control of. Chargers came back. They tied it. Cowboys kick a long field goal from Greg Zuerlein, which is not really shocking because he's got a really good leg. He had some kicking problems against Tampa Bay last week. But even though Dak didn't have the yardage numbers, was still 23 of 27. Justin Herbert got picked off twice in the defeat. And LA, another close game for them, but this one goes against them. They had won 5 straight games, 4 in a row to end last year, the opener at Washington, and then this game here ends the winning streak. But again, for the LA Chargers, another close game. They're going to be in all these games. It's just about if they can get over the hump. But the Cowboys end up beating the Chargers 20-17 on Sunday, and Dallas, they get in the win column, so now they are 1-1 so far on the season. Now, tonight you have Detroit and Green Bay, and that closes out the Monday night slate from Lambeau Field. And the Lions, they got swept by the Packers last year. Jared Goff, in fact, with the Rams, because he wasn't with Detroit, he was traded in the offseason for Matthew Stafford. But Jared Goff, though, he struggled big time in that playoff game against Green Bay. So we'll see what happens now. The Packers, at least they faced Goff before very recently. Now it's just about Aaron Rodgers and what he can do against this Detroit team. And yes, it is desperation time for Green Bay, even though, you look at their division. Minnesota's 0-2. Chicago got in the win column. They're 1-1, and Detroit's 0-1. But the Packers going to San Francisco next week really can't afford to slip up here. And this is the must-win spot for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. For as bad as he was last week against the New Orleans Saints, And then you see what happens with the Saints against Carolina. That it happens that fast that you end up playing really well, and then it hits the fan, to say the least, in the next game. And look, this Lions-Packers game, it's not exciting from the point spread standpoint. It's such a big line, but still Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see if he can get back on track, or if he can get on track coming up tonight against the Detroit Lions at Lambeau Field. So that's the look at the NFL from this past weekend. And again, want to remind you about our friends at WynnBET. You can get a $1,000 risk-free bet at WynnBET, and it's a welcome offer. It's really easy. If you lose your first wager, you get it back up to $1,000 as a free bet credit that you can use for another bet. And WynnBET, of course, the Wynn Resorts out in Las Vegas. WynnBET is legal in Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arizona. You have to be 21 or older to bet. And also, the WynnBET is the official sponsor of the New York Jets as well, the official partner, I should say, of the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium, the WynnBET Green Room. And that's for eligible bettors of legal age when the Jets are at home. And you can enjoy the atmosphere of a fully fledged in-person sports book for WynnBET. $1,000 risk-free bet that you can get with our friends at WynnBET. And you see the states there where it is legal. So that is obviously a very good deal if you want to get in with WynnBET and make that $1,000 risk-free bet. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for tuning in to today's edition of the Daily Insider. We won't be with you tomorrow. We'll be back on Wednesday, though, and we'll transition into week 3 of the NFL and also look ahead to college football as well. My thanks to Dave Sharapan for joining us on today's edition of the Daily Insider, and you can find Dave every Monday here on the Daily Insider, recapping the weekend in football. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for tuning into today's edition of the Daily Insider. If you missed any of it, you can find it on VegasInsider.com. We'll have the replay as well as on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider, and also the Bet and Collect podcast. You can find that as well on our podcast page at VegasInsider.com. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday for the next edition of the Daily Insider right here at VegasInsider.com.